All right, today I'm going to make the fruit pie. I've got about 3/4 of a bag of frozen peaches and some frozen blackberries. When I get fresh fruit, I put them in the freezer in bags so they're in the right proportions and so I can use them later. Freezing them keeps them pretty fresh. First thing I'm going to do is dump them in a bowl so that they can start to thaw, and then add some sugar and spices. So the amount of sugar varies depending on what fruit you use. Blackberries are tart, so they obviously need more sugar than the peaches will. For blackberries, I would add a whole cup. This is about 3/4 of a cup I'm going to add for that. I'm going to add a teaspoon-ish of cinnamon, because that's good with both of these fruits. When I make peach pie or cobbler, I always mix it up with a little bit of cardamom, which adds an interesting depth to the peaches, and I think it'll still come through with the blackberries in there. Now I'm going to just let the sugar help, let these set. The sugar will help thaw the fruit a little bit and start on my crust. So for pie crust, I always start with cold or frozen butter and add 2 cups of flour, my handy dandy 2-cup measuring cup. It's awesome. And then you take a pastry blender or 2 knives and you cut the butter into the flour. And just keep doing that until every piece of flour is coated with the butter. So if you don't have a pastry blender, you use 2 knives and just cross them like that. It's like a charm, no stirring, because that will make it hard and not flaky like the best pie crusts. You can also do this in the food processor. I just don't like to clean the food processor, so I do it this way a lot. All right, the other trick to flaky good pie crust is to use not only cold or frozen butter, but ice water when you start sticking it together. I've got this dough pretty well, the butter is pretty well distributed among the flour, so that's pretty good. This will be a nice flaky crust, and I'm going to just very slowly pour the ice water in. The recipe calls for, I think, 6 tablespoons, but it seems to never be exactly what you need. You want it to stick together into a ball. There again, no stirring, just pull up from the bottom. You can see it's starting to stick together. I don't want to add too much water, just enough so it's all one lump. All right, this is mostly stuck together. I'm still stirring it by pulling up from the bottom any dry pieces of flour, but I've got enough water in here that I can make it into a ball. So I'm going to cut it in half. This recipe calls for is enough to make 2 crusts. For my fruit pie, I'm going to have one on the bottom and one on the top. If I was making a different kind of pie that didn't need a top crust, I would either put it in the freezer or make 2, because 2 is always better than 1 when it comes to pie. So the next thing is to roll it out, and to do this you need a clean surface. You can either use the counter, or I have this handy dandy fancy pie crust bag thing that I'm going to use. I found that at the King Arthur store a couple years ago. I'm going to plop my dough in the middle with a little bit of flour, and I'm going to make it sort of round. It's not important at this stage. And then because the way this thing works, I'm going to zip it up and get my rolling pin and roll it out. If you're using the counter, of course you don't need that step. Get my rolling pin and roll this out. Now generally you want to flour your rolling pin. I don't need to do that with this thing. I need a little bit more counter space. This kitchen is small, and a lot of people have small kitchens, so that's not a bad thing to illustrate. That don't need a ton of space. You just roll it one way and then the next, so you get it sort of round and the size that you want. I'm peeling the crust off of my little rolling surface, and I didn't have a lot of flour on it, so I didn't have quite enough. We'll see if this comes out, if I'm going to have to re-roll it. Hopefully not, because that will make it a little tougher and not as flaky as you would like if you have to roll it out again. But it's not the end of the world. It's not going to be awful. It's going to take me a while. I won't make you watch all that. Alright, now I'm going to check on my fruit, see if it's thawed enough. Probably not. I'm going to have to let this sit a little bit while I take a break, because I can't spread that piece of peach. Okay, before we put the fruit in, we want to ventilate the pie crust so that it doesn't rise up as it's cooking. Hopefully it stays in place. So the fruit's still a little bit frosty, but it's soft enough I can mix it up. Now if there were a lot of juice, I'd put a little bit of flour or cornstarch in here to soak up the juice, but I think this will be fine. All right, now I'm just going to put this top crust over the pie and seal it up. Sealing it up is kind of my favorite part. You pinch it 3 fingers like that and tear off any extra. This got warm while I was waiting on the fruit to thaw. Shouldn't be quite this sticky if you don't have to leave it set. I probably should have stuck it in the fridge. Go all the way around, sealing it, the top crust to the bottom crust, and then poke a few vent holes in it. You can also do this by making strips, but that just seems like too much trouble to me. When I get done pinching it all, it'll go in the oven. All right, I always put pies on a cooking sheet before I put them in the oven in case they bubble over and makes the oven not quite as messy. I nearly forgot, you need to cover the edges of the pie before you put it in the oven. You can use aluminum foil for this, just tear off strips and place it around. The middle of the pie takes longer than the edges to cook, takes longer to cook, so your edges will be really burnt if you leave it the whole time. We cook it like this for the first 30 minutes, and then the last 15 we take it off to crisp the edges.